Alright, the first thing that we're going to learn to incorporate in your writing for your junior project research essay is all about formal objective style. So first we need to discuss what does this mean. And you should have by now procured a paper copy of the example assessment, and that's going to be a spot for you to take notes as you listen to this lecture. And as it says in the directions, I highly encourage you to put these notes in your own words. If you mindlessly copy down whatever I put on the slides here without thinking about it, it's not going to do you a lot of good. It's kind of a waste of your time. So in order to actually be thinking about and processing this information so that you can use this advice in your own writing, I highly suggest that you kind of rephrase these notes in your own words as you're writing them down. Summarizing is a natural way of doing that, so distilling it down into the most important points. Alright, so first, before we can discuss how to implement a formal objective style, we have to discuss what it means, okay? Well, here are a few points about formal objective style and what it means. One, the writer presents their claim as fact. It is the truth as the writer understands it. And I'll explain this further when I start to go through examples in this slideshow. The writer uses credible, researched facts to support their claim. The writer thoroughly explains how their research supports their claim while keeping their own emotions and biases out of that explanation. The writer maintains a professional tone and style, and the writer avoids referencing their self or targeting the reader. Now, some of these might make sense to you and some of these might confuse you, but we'll break them down like always further as we go, one by one. Alright, first, let's talk about, well, to break down how you can do it with a formal objective style, which is the second part of that question on your explanation assessment where you're taking notes. The first point we need to break down is the writer presents their claim as fact. It is the truth as the writer understands it. Okay, so first of all, when we're talking about your claim, what do I mean by that? Your claim is the heart of your thesis statement, right? And you figured out first semester what your thesis claim is going to be. You wrote a concession, claim, reasons, style, thesis. Okay, and the claim was the center, literally the center and the heart of your thesis statement. What are you proposing should or shouldn't be in your thesis statement? You need to present that as fact, which might seem confusing to you because, as I told you, you picked a controversial issue where people could rightfully believe one way about the topic or the other. But you are going to claim that your argument, whatever you are arguing, is in fact true, okay? Because it is the truth as you, the writer, understands it, okay? You've done the research, you've looked at both sides of this, and you know the truth, and that's how you're going to present it. So in order to sound credible and to get your reader to believe you and do this appropriately, you need to avoid phrases such as I think, I feel, and I believe, and any other way that you can phrase that. Okay, so on all of these, I'm going to break down bad examples and then directly after show you a good example of how to fix that. Know that I got all of these examples directly out of junior research projects from last school year. Now, of course, I'm going to be anonymous. I'm not going to tell you who wrote what, but I pulled these quotes out of student writing, okay? These are mistakes that I found in real student writing. Alright, let's look at this one. Although it is true that a police officer's job is difficult, I think that police brutality is completely avoidable. So see how they say, I think. So they do a good job of setting up their concession. Although it's true that a police officer's job is difficult, there's their concession. And here is their claim part of their thesis statement. I think that police brutality is completely avoidable. Okay? So when you hear somebody say this, the I think part, that immediately takes away some of their credibility because it makes them sound unsure. Okay? It plants some doubt in your mind about what they're saying because it's merely what they think. Okay? They're not proposing it is the truth. it is a fact. They're proposing it as something that they think, as their opinion. And we all know that we can easily disagree with opinions and disprove opinions. So look at the difference between that and when they just state their opinion as fact. Although it is true that police officers' job is difficult, police brutality is completely avoidable. Okay, who are you going to believe more? Somebody who says, I think that police brutality is completely avoidable, or are you more so going to believe the person that says police brutality is completely avoidable? I, for one, am going to agree with this person quicker. Okay, I'm going to trust them. I'm at least going to hear them out. Okay? A couple more examples. Although it will mean higher taxes, okay, there's the concession, and here's the claim. I feel the government should provide free health care to all United States citizens. I feel. That's a very touchy, feely phrase. I feel, okay? We don't care what you feel. We want to know what the facts are, okay? So here's a better way of saying this. Although it will mean higher taxes so the concession stays the same, here's the claim. The government should provide free health care to all United States citizens, okay? So this person is very assertive and straightforward about what they think should happen, okay? They don't put their feelings or their thoughts into it. This person's going to put their beliefs into it, okay? Although many conservative politicians publicly deny global warming, I believe it is happening, okay? If you just say it's something you believe, well, who cares, okay? We don't care what you believe. We want to know what the facts are, okay? So present your case as fact. Be assertive. Stand strong and firmly in what you're saying. Here's the difference. Although many conservative politicians publicly deny its existence, so see the concession stays the same, and here's how the claim changes. Global warming is an undeniable fact that requires immediate attention. Okay? So who are you going to believe more? Somebody who is just telling you their beliefs, or somebody who is stating a fact? All right, so this is one way to obtain a formal objective style in your writing. Here's the next way. The writer should use credible, researched facts to support their claim. All right, I'm posting a link to this slideshow in the learning playlist, and when you look at this slideshow, you can see that this is a live link here to a YouTube video that I posted first semester about how to make sure that you're using relevant evidence, okay? So it explains these points a lot further. I'm not going to reteach all of that because you can easily go watch that video, so I'm not going to go over it in this video. I'm just going to say these are the points, okay? You need to go back and watch that video. If you still haven't collected your evidence, maybe you didn't complete that learning playlist first semester, or if you want to double check your evidence and make sure that it's going to help you maintain this formal objective style. But these are the pointers. Don't use Google, okay, for your research. Research your writers and organizations to make sure that they're credible. Find the dates of what you're citing and make sure that they are current. And make sure that the articles you're citing are not just opinion pieces, okay? So to know more about what any of these means, again, in the learning playlist for this learning playlist, go back and find the link to this slideshow that I'm teaching in this video, and you can click on this link here and watch that video to get more information. All right, the next way to maintain a formal objective style is that the writer thoroughly explains how their research supports their claim while keeping their own emotions and biases out of that explanation. Okay? So I'm going to talk about this later on in the playlist, but the main structure for developing an argument is that you state a claim, okay, a minor claim that supports the big claim that you're making in your thesis, and after each minor claim that you make, you provide the research, the evidence, like we talked about here, and then directly after giving me that evidence, or giving your reader that evidence, you need to thoroughly explain how that research that you just quoted supports your claim. And while you do this, here's the key: keep your own emotions and biases out of that explanation. What does that mean? Okay? Well, obviously, hopefully, ideally, you picked a topic, since you had free choice, that you feel strongly about. Okay? And that's good. That's going to drive you to do more thorough research. That's going to drive you as you are discussing that research. But you need to keep emotions out of it and your biases. What do I mean by bias? Well, you obviously feel very strongly about certain things, and some things are related to your primary claim that you're making, but it isn't directly that claim. And so you need to make sure that you are only discussing the facts as you present them. You're not tying your emotions and your opinions about topics that sort of relate to your claim into your explanations. And that's a very confusing way of saying that. So I'm just going to go through examples because that's the best way to learn something, I think. I need to make this slightly smaller so you can see it. So let's make this one size 12. Okay. Here's a bad example. Again, this is directly from student writing. According to Dr. Robert Johnson, cows produce significantly more milk if their handlers talk to them gently rather than shouting and pushing them around. So one thing to know, some context matters here. This student's research essay was all about how vegetarian diets, I think it was all about vegetarian diets because they were in the culinary field and they wanted to discuss that. And so they were talking about the benefits of vegetarianism on human health and on for animal ethics, something like that. Anyway, so they present this evidence, okay, that cows produce more milk if their handlers talk to them gently and are kind to them, basically. So the next part, and this is correct, the next thing you're supposed to do after you give evidence is you're supposed to discuss how that evidence proves your point, okay? So here's what she does after that. She says, if cows are treated properly, they're able to give you a better taste in your milk. Okay, so that's where she's kind of just restating what the evidence said. And then she moves on to say, animals have emotions and are breathing, living things like humans. Okay, so this research that she cited here said absolutely nothing about the fact that animals have emotions and are breathing, living things. So this is where you can see that this writer is obviously very emotional herself about this topic, and she truly believes in animal rights, because even though she's only discussing this quote here, and that's what she's supposed to be discussing, she throws this in, which speaks to her own emotions and biases about the topic. Okay? This does not even belong here. So here's a way that she could have discussed this research. So this part is the same. It delivers the same bit of research, okay, about how cows produce more milk if they're treated kindly. Okay. Now here's how I would fix this. As Johnson points out, humane treatment of dairy cattle directly benefits humans. If these animals are meant for dairy production, it's only logical that their handlers would do everything possible to increase production. Okay, so here's the difference between these two. This one gets off topic and gets into the writer's emotions and biases about the topic. This one is going to be more effective in arguing the case that people should be kind to animals, which I think is actually what her thesis statement was, because it's going to convince people, even if somebody isn't 100% sold on a vegetarian diet or things like that, they could not disagree with the fact that if animals are meant for dairy production, it is logical that they should be kind to them so that they can increase that production. See how this is a lot easier, this is an easier sell for people on all ends of the spectrum. So this is how you keep emotions and biases out while you are explaining your research, okay? All right, let's move on. The next way that you maintain a formal and objective style is to maintain a professional tone and style. Be professional, okay? One way that you can maintain a professional tone and style is to avoid contractions. It's just one of those rules. In formal writing, we should not write with contractions. Contractions are when you take two words and put them together with an apostrophe, such as its, which would become it is. Theirs becomes there is when you break the contraction apart. Don't becomes do not. Okay? Hasn't becomes has not. And there's many, many, many more contractions. There's a ton of them. But you should always avoid contractions when you are doing a formal objective style of writing, which is exactly what you're doing in your junior research essay. Alright, so this is pretty simple to fix, but here's an example. The audience of any news outlet should take a journalist's word on the topic that they are covering because it's their job to bring up the truth to those who want to hide something from the public. Okay, this is an easy fix. It's becomes it is. That's all there is to it. Now, you might have gone, well, what about this word, Ms. Harrison? Journalists. Okay, this is not a contraction. This is a possessive word. It is showing that something belongs to the journalist's word. Okay? So not in every case that you have an apostrophe is it a contraction. So you need to know the difference there. Journalists is showing possession. Its is a contraction, meaning it is. Okay, so make sure that in your writing you are avoiding contractions. Simple. The next way that we maintain a formal objective style through tone, professional tone, is to avoid slang and conversational words. Alright? This can look 100 different ways, okay, but here's just one example that I found in that same research essay that I just quoted in the previous example. So, in the earlier years of journalism, many newspaper companies would exaggerate their headlines and stories to sell more copies of their papers. This word right here, so, that sounds very conversational, okay? We say things like that at the top of our sentences when we're talking out loud, okay? I do it all the time. But we don't want to do that in professional writing, okay? And you are doing formal, professional, tonal writing, okay? So all I did to fix this one is drop that word so at the beginning of the sentence. All right. Here's another example of avoiding slang and conversational words. This student was arguing about video editing on the behalf of video editors, and he said, some video editors should be paid just as much or even more than the video and film producer. They are the ones who put in more hours of work and put in more effort into making sure everything looks right. On top of that, staring at a screen for long periods of time messes with eyesight. Alright, this word right here, messes with. I should say this whole term, messes with. That's a slang type term, okay? It's not a professional tone. It's not something like, imagine if a doctor was on a stand in a trial, okay, like speaking on medical terms. The doctor would not say messes with, okay? And always like imagining a courtroom and what a professional would say on the stand in a courtroom. I probably listen to too many true crime podcasts, and that's why my mind goes there. But I always imagine when I'm writing something professional, is it something that a professional would say on a court stand, okay? If not, then leave it out or find a way to change it. So let's look at how we could change this. On top of that, staring at a screen for long periods of time can be harmful to eyesight. Editors should be compensated for that damage. Okay? So can be harmful to eyesight is more professional than saying messes with eyesight. So be on the lookout for things like that as you're writing. Alright, the next way to maintain a professional tone and style is to avoid abbreviations. And again, there's hundreds of examples of this, but here's just a couple common ones. You should not say TV, you should say television. You should not say phone, you should say telephone. You should not say US, you should say United States. So these are some ways to avoid abbreviations, okay? Another way to avoid abbreviation, as in this example, is to avoid literal abbreviations, okay? These are called acronyms, okay? So each letter stands for something. According to the USDA, the U.S. grows more corn than any other crop. How will we change that? Well, the USDA stands for the United States Department of Agriculture. So that's what you should say. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, the United States grows more corn than any other crop. Okay. I would say an exception to this would be NASA. NASA, I honestly don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look it up to be sure what NASA stands for. It is technically an acronym, but because we pronounce it as NASA, as its own word, and NASA is referred to even by government officials as NASA, it's okay to say NASA. Okay, so if you have questions about those individually, you can just let me know and I can walk you through those, or you can always Google it. In professional writing, is it okay to say? Okay, you can look those up. Alright, another way to maintain a formal objective style is to avoid referencing yourself or targeting the reader. So we talked a little bit about referencing yourself before when we talked about avoiding things like I think, I believe, okay? But you should also avoid any reference to yourself. And you should not reference your reader directly through words like you. And so I, me, mine, those would be self-referencing words. You want to leave those out unless you're quoting somebody else. That's always the exception. Same with contractions and other things that we've mentioned. If it's inside of a quote, you leave it the way it was written because you are directly quoting it. But if it's in your own words, you need to avoid these terms. Okay, so you don't want to target your reader by saying you, your. And these words, our, we, us, that does both at once. That references yourself and targets your reader all at the same time, so you definitely want to avoid those. So here's a bad example. Tragedies are one thing the journalist takes to heart. During the Florida shooting, everything was chaos. As a reporter, you have to keep calm because everyone else is with a heavy heart. Okay. As a reporter, you have to keep calm. Well, that's very confusing to me because I'm not a reporter. So it's an inaccurate word, for one thing. The writer is targeting me and calling me a reporter. That's literally what they're doing here, and they should not do that. Okay? They're talking about reporters, they're not talking about me. This is a trap that students fall into very frequently, and it's really easy to fix. Here's how we fix it. Instead of saying, as a reporter, you have to keep calm, here's what I would say. A reporter must keep calm in the face of this chaos so that they can capture an objective account of the events. I also fixed the second half of the sentence because the meaning was a little bit unclear to me. So it's just that easy. Just name the group of people or the type of person that you are talking about instead of targeting your reader with words like you. Okay? So here's an example that uses these types of words that loop the reader in with the writer. Even though many other developed countries offer free college education to their citizens, we as a country do not. This makes it to where many of us can't go to college. Alright, first of all, we've got a contraction here. That should go. But here's how you can fix this. We don't want to use these words, we and us. We want to say, even though many other developed countries offer free college education to their citizens, the United States currently does not. This cost associated with a college education keeps many citizens from attaining a college degree. So instead of saying we and us, I mention who I'm actually talking about. I'm talking about the United States as a country. I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about citizens of this country. So it's easy fixes that must be made. Alright, this has been a brief overview of how to establish and maintain a formal objective style.